Hello Brandon. So today we'll be talking about the summon skill Shiva. I've actually seen the community talking about Shiva having an identity crisis, but despite that, I consider her to be the strongest summon in the game, mainly because of how much freedom she gives you. In fact, that's the overarching theme I get when it comes to a skill set, so let's go into that. As usual, before we begin, this guide took time and effort to make, so if you got value out of it, then please do drop a like and a sub. Alright, let's start this by first talking about Shiva's iconic feat, Cold Snap. So basically, as you all know, this skill enables you to slide in any direction, be it on the ground or on the air. If you slide twice, you leave a totem of sorts on the ground, and if it touches the enemy, it'll freeze the said enemy. What's even more cooler about this, and what isn't mentioned, is that you can also use this to freeze the stagger bar. I've linked a video in my description of a guy using this mechanic and other time stop mechanics to do over 2 million damage, so go check it out. Another part of this skill is that if you do a perfect evasion, which can be done on the ground and the air, you'll trigger the best skill in the game, Permafrost, which freezes all the enemies in the screen for a couple of seconds. This skill alone helps you to set up many of your other skills that has a small casting delay without interruptions. For example, Dancing Steel, Ignition, Lightning Rod, and Impulse. Additionally, what isn't mentioned is that you can cancel into this skill almost immediately, similar to Titan's counter. This was probably done to encourage a very fluid form of combat, and I absolutely love it. Do take note that it'll take practice to get the timing right, since the window of evasion can be very small. The final part about this skill is the distance of evasion. I'm putting this in because it affects a lot of the other skills in Shiva's class. This distance that I just mentioned ties in with all of her other skills, and I'll bring it up later. Next, let's talk about Rhyme. So this skill I believe is the most confusing part of a skill set. Let's get the cons out of the way. First, it does little damage. Second, it does little will bar damage. Third, and finally, it can be hard to execute since the skill placement isn't directly in front of you. Those are all true, so let's try and alleviate that perception. First thing to note is that you can constantly cast Rhyme without delay for a couple of times. This will be important in a bit. Next, if you move close to an enemy and cast Rhyme, initially it won't interrupt the enemy, but after the initial cast is done, and you cast it again while the enemy is either in the line of sight of Rhyme and you're close to the enemy will be pushed backwards into the crystal. You can do this to pull all your enemies into a singular area and then finish them. Do take note, if you hit an enemy and then cast Rhyme, the enemy will automatically be sucked in as well, skipping the entire need of having to do it twice. This also works in mid-air, which allows you to do cool combos with the light enemies that are stuck in the crystal. Generally, this skill is good if you're using it for light enemies, but if you get the Rhyme talisman and combine this with Cold Snap alongside talismans like the Magic Burst will damage one, you'll actually be able to dish out some good will bar damage during each opening. But how then do we aim the skill though? Well, the answer in getting it right is basically either using Cold Snap by dodging backwards from where you're standing, or the other best option is directly after the perfect dodge, which causes Permafrost as seen here. Now let's move into Mesmerize. This skill, as mentioned, is a form of crowd control where it pulls the enemies towards you. From this skill, you can also continue into other AoE skills. Some quick examples would be Wicked Wheel or Upheaval, which both launches the enemy into the air, or just Rhyme to push the enemy forward. This skill also tracks an enemy if it's in front of you on the ground and puts them directly below you, just perfect for a down thrust. But another thing which is super cool about this skill is how much damage it does on a will bar of a heavy enemy if it hits right, and its cooldown is super fast, which is amazing. One thing to note is that during groups of enemy situation, to combo into Rhyme, it's best to move into the middle of the group, cast Mesmerize, dodge backwards using Cold Snap, and use Rhyme as I'm showing here. Third, let's move into Ice Age, which is another placement dependent skill. The gist of the skill is that it pushes whatever enemies in its line of sight towards the endpoint of the skill and freezes them for a while. You can use Mesmerize to pull enemies towards you and then continue with Rhyme and use Ice Age as a finisher, or use Ice Age first and then Rhyme. Either way works, and sometimes you won't get the full hit, but it's okay. Similar to Rhyme, the best situations to use this is either when you have groups of enemies lined in front of you, after Rhyme is cast so you can proceed with an Ice Age finisher, after a permafrost, or when dealing with staggered enemies. To get the right distance, you just need to dodge back once and launch the skill. Practice getting the distance right using Cold Snap as a distance gauge, and you'll quickly master placement for all of Shiva's skills. Fourth and finally, let's talk about Diamond Dust. I mean, everyone knows this skill, right? It has a fast cooldown, does AoE damage, charges a huge amount of your limit bar, and it does huge will bar damage. In fact, if this is done on a staggered enemy, the multiplier easily goes up to 1.4 or 1.5 if you got another skill in like Mesmerize. What this means is that it frees up so many skill slots for you to focus on health damage instead. You can just combo this with Bahamut's Giga Flare, and even that would be enough. The best time to use this would be either during the start of a battle or when a heavy enemy is staggered. If you're playing Ultimaniac though, you can deliberately use it to quickly charge your limit bar to keep yourself from dying. Here's some snippets of me using mainly Shiva's skill in an Ultimaniac run just to give you an idea of how to use it. You can also combo this skill with Flame Breath or any other AoE skill depending on your creativity as well, so just go ham. If you feel I missed out on anything, do share in the comments below. I'll end this video here for today. Look forward to the final Eikon skill Odin. Till then, keep having fun.